It's a crazy day in the world of Magic the Gathering. Wizards of the Coast has just dropped an emergency Magic ban. And at the same time, they have just announced their new Commander panel and outlined their plans for the Commander format going forwards.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The Magic Historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends. I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered for a jam-packed installment of Mega Magic News. We have some big issues to discuss. The surprise banning, the new direction of the Commander panel, and what Wizards of the Coast is going to do in that regards. Before we do that, just want to say a big thank you to all of the people who have subscribed and checked out my new movie review channel. There have been a ton of positive responses to it, and the channel is still very teeny-weeny, but it's growing nicely. So thank you for being a part of it, and if you haven't already heard about it, go check out that movie channel. We're having a lot of fun, and people are quite enjoying it. Now, let us turn to the news of the day, starting with the standard ban. So what I want to do is go through what Wizards of the Coast said, and then I will add some additional details that kind of clarify exactly what's going down and why this is happening. Okay, so the ban is Leyline of Resonance. Who would have thought that freeze spells were a problem in Magic the Gathering? Oh, me! I would have thought that. So, Leyline of Resonance is banned in Standard, but specifically on Arena and specifically for Best of One. It's also getting suspended at the same time in Alchemy, which is pretty wild considering Alchemy has been getting more and more insane on Arena with stuff like the new heist abilities and all the other goofiness they throw in there. But even then, a free enchantment that's overpowered is too strong for Alchemy. So it's on the suspended bench until they can give it some tweaks. So let's get into the announcement. It says, Leyline of Resonance. We love fast and fun Magic. This is especially true for Magic Arena. Fast and fun. I have to admit, Magic has become too fast for my tastes. I literally play the starter decks on Arena because I like a slower pace, and those decks can sometimes be like, check it out, game's decided on like turn 4 or 5. So even the lowest levels of Magic are on turbo speed. But anyways, they say that they especially love fast and fun Magic for Magic Arena, where the guiding philosophy is fast, fun Magic for everyone, anywhere. I've never heard this before. It's almost like they're just throwing this in there to be like, hey guys, it's always been our plan for it to be super fast. So hey, it's Arena's faster and faster where people concede like that, right? So what's critical is that it be fast and fun for both players involved. Fast without the fun undermines the purpose of playing the game. Absolutely true. And this is the issue both we and the player community have observed with Leyline of Resonance on Magic Arena. It disrupts normal play in Best of One constructed matches, and it's led us to the decision to ban the card in Best of One standard constructed only on Magic Arena, and to suspend it in Alchemy until the release of a rebalanced card. What led to this decision? Back in 2019, we made a similar targeted adjustment with Nexus of Fate. Nexus of Fate was obnoxious. People taking endless turns and you're just sitting there staring at the screen. The most you're doing is clicking resolve, resolve, resolve if you have some kind of response in your hand but that you can't use, or have any card on the board that can be sacrificed like a food, whatever it is. You just sit there and go, my entire interaction in this game is just clicking a button that lets my opponent go. And if I don't, then it will just rope burn down and I will get punished. So, where Nexus of Fate made gameplay unfun through a long loop that couldn't be shortcut to the win, Leyline of Resonance has made gameplay unfun by making it so there isn't much playing involved. And this is something we're seeing across multiple formats, right? Not just on Arena. Look at Commander, for example. The recent Commander bans specifically cited the fact that before, Commander games could reasonably go up to 8 to 12 turns, and now it's like, yo, these games can be ended in like 4 to 6 turns, so we need to slow it down. And that obviously led to the banning of the Jeweled Lotus, the Mana Crypt, and the outrage that led to the next part of the news we'll talk about when we get to the whole Commander situation. But either way, so there isn't much playing involved is an issue that's growing in Magic the Gathering, right? So either folks playing Leyline of Resonance decks concede with their initial hand because they're dissatisfied with the draw and are unable to mulligan down to a winning solution, or they win within the first few turns of play. So it's saying basically either you have the winning hand and you're like, yeah, let's go, or you can mulligan into the winning hand, yeah, let's go, or forget it, I'm out, I'm not even going to play you. If I can't blow you out of the water in 14 seconds, I'm not even going to play. So it leads to a bunch of non-games where either somebody concedes right away because they don't have the gas, or somebody concedes right away because the other person has the gas, or if they don't concede, they're still dead before they get a second turn. That is insane. That is the realm of like a vintage Magic, right? Where it's like almost coin flip Magic. Do you go first? You win. Actually, pretty much like the Omniscience drafts that just happened. They were fun, but they were very much predicated on who goes first is probably going to win, right? So basically, it says they're unable to mulligan down to a winning solution, or they win within the first few turns of play. This is especially problematic in best of one constructed formats, where players on the opposite side of the battlefield win or lose the game, and subsequently the match, with little or no decision making on their part, and no option to sideboard in possible solutions for subsequent games. So obviously best of 3, you have the ability to completely change your deck around with up to 15 different cards, and then you can just give yourself the elbow drop. Bam! Coming in from the top ropes, ready to hose you, mono red boy, right? So that helps to balance things out. But at the same time, if you do have to set your whole sideboard up to just deal with one kind of deck, that's not a great scenario to be in. While Nexus of Fate created non-interactive win conditions that could take half an hour or more to finish, it's true. I remember those times. Leyline of Resonance is creating non-interactive win conditions within 2 turns. Both disrupt what we would consider normal play. And Wizards' definition of normal play has shifted over the years, especially in recent time. Ever since they created Fire Design, they've really ramped up the power level of cards, which has sped up the formats. So, timing of this decision. Alongside fast and fun, another one of Magic's Arena's guiding principles is to provide an authentic Magic the Gathering experience. This includes alignment of banned and restricted announcements whenever possible to ensure the play experience is the same regardless of when, where, or how you play. As we noted in our recent Arena blog, this is a card we've been keeping an eye on with the goal of answering 2 essential questions. 1. Does the data support Leyline of Resonance disrupting what we consider normal play? And 2, if yes, is it happening often enough to warrant action on Arena outside of our normal banning cadence? And yes, very much it does, right? This is an emergency response. This kind of data aggregation and analysis takes time. The first week or so after a major card set releases is often incredibly chaotic, and the meta can go through several radical iterations before settling on the new normal. For every screenshot or post shared on a social channel, there are thousands upon thousands of other matches being played quietly in the background. We wanted to be sure that the problems shared with us by some of our most engaged players had the data to support it, and that the data continued to support it even after the meta settled. Now, I get this. People are very quick to rage about things online. So Wizards of the Coast going, we're not just going to listen to the initial knee-jerk reaction of a handful of people who went on Twitter the first day and were like, roggle, boggle, boggle. But at the same time, if they had people testing this stuff ahead of time more, this kind of problem would have been more evident to them, right? So, basically, the answer to both their questions were ultimately yes and yes. The number of best of one standard constructed games ending before turn 4 has essentially doubled since the release of Duskmourn House of Horror. Twice as often. I like how they go before turn 4. They don't really want to lead into the whole before turn 2. Let's not talk about those numbers specifically, right? So anyways, the numbers remain consistent in the weeks since release, and there's a big red allegedly 4-cost enchantment reason why. I love the allegedly. Wizards of the Coast can't help themselves. But let me finish this before we get into that, all right? With the updated banned and restricted announcement cadence, we didn't feel comfortable waiting until December 16th. Imagine that. 2 more months of mono red just laying in. And let's be real, losing Leyline of Resonance is not going to stop the dominance of this deck. It's just going to reduce the amount of complete blowouts that it gives, right? So, to be clear, this is an issue unique to Magic Arena and only in standard best of one constructed and alchemy matches. The banning is not based on the general power level or the overall health of the standard format. And then for collections, people who had Leyline of Resonance as part of their arena collections prior to the ban's implementation will receive rare wildcards equal to the number of Leylines they have, and there will be an in-game notification when this happens. So, I checked already today before I came to record this video, loaded up my client. They have not implemented the ban yet, and I presume that means it won't be implemented today, which means if you have a Magic Arena account, you can hop on today, you can craft all the copies of Leyline of Resonance, and then when they ban them, they'll give you wild cards for them. So I already had one in my account. I crafted 3 more. That way when the ban announcement gets implemented, then I get 4 wild cards back. And that means when I'm opening booster packs, I won't get ley lines like that, unless of course it's in a draft or something like that. So that's the way to go. If they haven't already banned it, then you can go ahead and snag those wild cards. Now, this ties in to Wizards and their refusal to accept the fact that free magic spells are a terrible idea. Ignoring casting costs is a terrible idea because casting costs are the balancing mechanic of Magic the Gathering. That's how you balance the power of cards. The total casting cost plus the different colors of mana add a difficulty to casting the spell. So they have a situation where they could have easily predicted this happening, but they make cards at such a breakneck pace now that you reach a scenario where they just don't test things as much. This is something they should have caught in advance, and considering how much of a standard play actually happens on Arena and how much of it is best of one, this is a huge oversight. And what's even crazier to me is I thought, you know what, maybe part of the big problem here is the fact that we're dealing with a different size standard format now, right? You've got 3 years of standard cards and things like that. So I went to take a look at the deck list and break down how many cards wouldn't actually be in the deck if there was only a 2-year rotation. And it turns out there's only one card in the entire deck. It's a 4 of. The Scamp, right? That's the only card that comes outside of the 2-year standard window. And what that means is Wizards knew all of these cards would be standard legal at the same time. They put all of these factors together. Now, I understand on one hand, Wizards of the Coast wants to make sure that there's always a viable mono red deck to play because it's cheap and accessible and lets you play your games quickly. And there will always be a demand for that. There's something about Arena, if you've never played it, that warps the nature of Magic the Gathering, where normally when we're playing Magic, we're doing it for the joy of playing Magic. But because Arena has a rewards accrual system, whereby playing games, you win gold and experience to level up on the Mastery Pass, which will get you booster packs and styles and things like that. So it turns playing games into a different scenario where you're like, I need to play X number of games and get X number of wins to get this much gold today, to make sure I'm churning down my Mastery Pass. And the Mastery Pass has some real problems that I covered in yesterday's video. So if you didn't see yesterday's video, it's got spoilers for Foundation, it's got teasers for Foundations, and it covers a number of issues with the current Mastery Pass. But the ultimate thing that happens as a result of this whole reward system is people will be playing the game to get the reward. So the game itself isn't the reward. Getting the gold and the resources to build out their collection, to get more packs, is the actual goal. So that's one of the reasons that mono red is so popular, because you either win fast or you lose fast, and the decks are incredibly cheap to make. Most of the decks rely heavily on small level commons and uncommons. This deck, you've got the Slick Shot, which is a rare that you need for the deck, and it had ley lines as a rare in the deck, but they're not there anymore. So virtually all the cards are commons and uncommons, and wild cards for commons and uncommons and actually just commons and uncommons themselves are very easy to acquire on Arena. So it's something that beginners can ease themselves in with, and it's accessible to everybody and gives them that fast pace, let me get my reward. So I understand why it exists, but Wizards of the Coast has pushed the power level up of Magic in the first place, and then once they introduced play boosters, they intentionally pushed the power level up again. They said we were going to see more powerful commons and uncommons because overall there are fewer cards in the booster packs, going from 15 to 14 cards and changing the amount of commons and uncommons in the set has basically required them, in their opinion, to up the power level. I'm of the mind that Magic power creep is absolutely out of control, and it's just going to keep accelerating because as Wizards makes new sets, they're really focused on things like Commander and formats outside of Standard. If you didn't hear Wizards' philosophy when they created Fire Design, the idea was that Standard sets weren't just for Standard anymore. They had to make cards that could affect Modern and Commander. We want cards for everybody, but ultimately it damages Standard. So you combine that with the fact that they do way less testing now, and you end up in the scenario we have where they literally just and now they've had to do an emergency ban to axe the ley line. So as far as I'm concerned, this was inevitable, right? You have to play within Magic's rules in terms of the actual balancing of cards, and going with free cards is absolutely a terrible, terrible choice, right? Best of 3 isn't nearly as big on Arena. Obviously, this hasn't affected physical Magic nearly as much, so there is that. You can argue that maybe Leyline of Resonance tiptoes the line of the current power level, but ultimately the entire thing of Magic, we're not even power creeping anymore. We're power running down the road. Now, let us talk about what's going on with Wizards' plans for Commander. This actually came up in a live stream last night where somebody asked me what's going on with Wizards' Commander bracket system. They said they were going to do an announcement about that. Well, they've made the announcement, and they've called them tiers and they've called them brackets. So I'll use those terms interchangeably. If I say Commander tiers or Commander brackets, they mean the same thing. So when Wizards of the Coast took over the running of Commander from the Rules Committee a few weeks back, they announced that we were going to be getting different tiers, okay? Now, that's all they had to tell us. They're like, okay, we're going to have like 4 different tiers, maybe more. Maybe we'll make a 5th tier, and we'll have like precons be tier 1, and then we'll have tier 4 be the most powerful, crazy stuff imaginable, right? So as far as I'm concerned, the idea behind this tier system is that there will be no more bannings in Commander, right? That's just how it looks to me from the surface. And ultimately, the announcement that they made was to let us know who their new Commander panel is. So at this time, they have gotten 17 different people on board to be part of this panel. And it's interesting what they're doing because the panel isn't going to have the level of access that you might think. The Commander Rules Committee got more access than this Commander panel will be getting. They're not going to be shown all of the Magic cards that Wizards of the Coast is making and going, hey, what do you think about these different things for Commander? Their advice will be solicited on individual cards here and there or general concepts, but ultimately Wizards of the Coast is not giving them any genuine power in terms of determining anything for Commander. They have no ability to try and veto any cards that are being made. They have no ability to ultimately do anything other than say, hey, I don't like this, or hey, I do like this. And the article, I do have to laugh, it talks about, it's like, we encourage them to disagree if they want to. They can strongly disagree if they want to. But we all know, unless you didn't hear already, and I covered this 2 videos ago, that Wizards of the Coast is making everybody on the panel sign a non-disparagement contract, where for the rest of their lives, they're not allowed to disparage Wizards of the Coast or their products. So they can't say anything negative about Wizards of the Coast or their products forever, regardless of whether they're part of the Commander panel or not. And what's interesting about this is these 17 people that they've gotten on board, they are predominantly content creators. So what does this mean for their content going forwards, right? Wizards of the Coast made them sign a contract. Because if you haven't seen it, go watch my video 2 videos ago talking about Wizards silencing the new Commander members. Because literally they have this in the contract and said that everybody has to sign it. So there's no way around it. Everybody on the panel signed a non-disparagement contract, which means they can't say anything negative about Wizards. And that contract, basically, even when they leave the panel, that part of the contract survives. That's part of the legal language they used in there. So any Magic creator who leaves the panel will not be allowed to criticize Wizards of the Coast in any way, shape, or form. And when they talk about the fact that the panel is 17 members, they specifically say, well, that's going to be reduced. So it almost feels to me like they're just taking advantage of it to muzzle content creators and go, hey, you're not allowed to say anything negative about us. We literally have a legal contract that we can sue you over if you do. So they announced the 17 members, and then they brought up the bracket system and said, we were going to have some stuff to tell you basically in time for the end of this month. And we know you're all expecting it, but guess what? We've decided that we need more time to think about it all. And this doesn't surprise me at all. It's like when they did the situation with Standard, where they came out and like, Standard is falling apart, and we have big plans for Standard, like really big, good plans. For now, all we're doing is we're making it into 3 years, but we have a lot of other plans. Don't think that we don't. And then nothing else materialized. They didn't really say anything else. This whole tier system is the same scenario. This whole bracket system is the exact same beast. In the article, it's even said, you can completely ignore our bracket system if you want and just do whatever you want. They're absolutely going rule zero with it. So at this point, they're not putting any cards into any of the brackets. They're still putting all the responsibility on the players to argue with each other. Your deck is garbage, Billy. I'm gonna punch you in the nose if you don't take that crap out of there. Your deck is not a 2, Billy. It's an 11 on the scale, and I hate your guts for it, right? So those kind of arguments are still gonna happen. The bracket system, as far as I am concerned, is going to work like this. All of the most powerful cards will be in the top bracket, so Wizards never has to ban them. They just go, just don't play with the tier 4 cards if you don't want to have the competitive insane power level. Ha! And then they'll never have to have another scenario where Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt, cards like that, get banned, because Wizards of the Coast hated that happened. They asked the rules committee not to do it, and they did it anyway. So Wizards of the Coast will never have to ban another card. And when they release new new precons and stuff, they'll just be like, check it out. All these cards are tier 1 because they're in the commander decks, even though they could easily be tier 4 cards. And then later they'll just go, actually, these 5 cards from these commander decks are tier 4 cards. So, but guess what? We've got new commander decks that happen to be in the same colors. So you can get yourself this new commander and use this instead. The tier system is just going to be used for Wizards of the Coast to avoid banning cards altogether, and then to shift cards that they're done selling up into tier 4. So when you're arguing with your friends, you can't use tier 4 cards, can't use that anymore. And then they'll introduce just as powerful or more powerful cards and call them either tier 1, 2, or 3, right? They can do that like forever and never have to do another banning. And I fully expect they're gonna, because in the article they said, don't expect any more bannings at all in this year. We might not do anything with Commander at all this year, which is what I expect. Here's how I view it's going to go. Wizards of the Coast is going to have this philosophy. Take a look at the banned list. All the stuff that's on the reserved list, they're not allowed to reprint anyways, so they're not going to bother unbanning those because they can't make any money from it. But every other card that's on the ban list there will most likely get unbanned, and it will be unbanned right before Wizards of the Coast announces a set where they're selling it. Do you miss Primeval Titan? Do you miss Iona? Well, guess what? Great news. We've decided the Commander environment is robust and in the interest of the community and everyone having fun. We're happy to unban Iona and Primeval Titan, and we just so happen to have them as mythic level reprints. They're in this set with 7 different treatments, but only in collector boosters. And the collector packs are $50 a pop. Get them today. Get the new Commanderification Horizons right now. So the tier system is ultimately Wizards. They're straight out saying, you can just ignore it. It doesn't really matter. But at the same time, we're also going to use this as an excuse to never do bannings again. So the announcement really just boiled down to, we're not doing nothing. Here are the members. They don't really have the power to do anything. And either carry on until we really get into the goofery. Understand that Wizards of the Coast takes about a year and a half, maybe 2 years sometimes, to really put things into action. So they can't really galvanize themselves and take advantage of this commander situation for months. They might be able to do it a little faster, maybe in 6 months, if they do a special secret lair where they're like, Commander Secret Lair, the unbanning. And then they just go, we unban these 4 cards. They're in this secret lair. $100, big boy. And if you want the special Ultra Edition, $150. I would not be surprised in the least if that's how it goes. So, my friends, that wraps up the news. Again, I invite you to check out my movie review channel. We're having a lot of fun over there, me and the people watching the videos. So check it out. I would love that. And tonight, I'll be doing a fun live stream over on my live stream channel. You're welcome to come and join me. Thanks for coming by, my friends. Big shout out to my patrons. You guys rule. You're very dear to my sweet, shriveled, old, miserable heart. So, that's it for now. I will see you all in the next video.